Thanks, Joe. Well, what if your greatest pain could become your greatest platform? Today, we're joined by an extraordinary woman who has turned adversity into purpose. From foster care to mental health advocacy, Calissa Ngozi is a nationally recognized speaker, a professor, and a mother. She's been honored with the 2024 Black Diamond Ball Award, the Remarkable Mothers Empowerment Award, and Niagara's 40 Under 40. Calissa, welcome to 100 Huntley Street.
Thank you for having me.
We're so glad you're joining us today, and very eager to hear your story and to share it with our viewers. Now, Calissa, you, as a young child, how old were you when you were in foster care?
So I was in foster care at about 3 months of age.
Okay,
so in infancy.
As infancy. And then you were adopted into a family.
I was.
What was that early journey like for you in the sense of how it shaped your ideas of identity and belonging?
You know, someone once said to me, "Are you a Black woman or are you a woman who is Black?" And that spoke to me because my parents are white. And I had a crisis of identity with trying to find, where do I fit in this big world? I remember when I was a little girl, my mom and I, we were sitting in the kitchen, and I walked over to this big, massive window. And I put my hand up, and then she put hers up beside me. And then I took it, and then I turned it inside, and then I looked outside, and I said, "Mommy, I think God made a mistake." And she looked at me and she was like, "Baby girl, what do you mean?" And I said, "Well, how come we're the same on the inside, but we're not the same on the outside?" And that really just sparked that conversation of, "You're adopted." So it was a really big thing because I didn't see differences. I didn't see color in that moment until I did.
And Calissa, when you think about that idea, God made a mistake, what was the depth of that statement?
Well, I thought we were the same. I mean, you're my mommy. That's my daddy. It didn't matter that they have blonde hair and brown hair. It's you're my parents, full stop. But really, society teaches you, well, no, you're different. You're not like your parents. And that opens a whole nother conversation. Why am I treated differently? Because I do come from you, I think. So it's having that conversation of, well, no, there is a difference, and we do need to talk about it.
Now, faith did play a role in your family's life, and your family would go to church sometimes.
Yes.
Your adoptive parents and also your brother. So in that season, did your faith begin to take hold a bit more about, being a child of God? Did any of that start to layer in there?
Honestly, my best memories is formed with church. So when I was in Awana, when I did junior youth, or when I did senior youth, like these are experiences that created core memories for me. I remember that sometimes my parents had a difficult time getting me to youth group. So we would have people in the church that would come like from 15, 20 minutes away. They would pick me up, they would pick up my brother, and then they would take us to church. And those core memories are what has helped shape me today. And it really just helped me to know who God is.
Calissa, you already had challenges, I'm sure, being an infant in the foster care system, being adopted into a white family, recognizing those challenges. But actually, your adoptive mom began to have some mental health challenges, and that started the unraveling of your family unit. Tell us a bit about that season and what transpired and what you experienced.
Well, God has a funny way of showing up and letting you know what your passion and what your calling is. So my biological mother has mental health as well. So she has paranoid schizophrenia, and that's why I was put into foster care initially. So I was conceived with mental health, and then mental health transitioned with my adopted family as well. So my adopted mom also suffers from pretty severe depression. And there was a season in our lives that it really took a hold of her, and she ended up being hospitalized for a short time. So that threw our family unit off. My parents ended up separating for a little bit. We were living in British Columbia at the time for a couple of years. My dad took my brother and moved back to Ontario, and I stayed with my mom. So it was really tumultuous. It was really upsetting. There was no church in sight in terms of our involvement, until my mom was like, "I need to go back home." So we drove the 5 days from British Columbia to Ontario, and then my parents did end up reuniting. Now, it did take some time. It wasn't just instantaneous, but that's where God started to show up. And he said that your family unit isn't done yet. Let me work on you. And they did.
So beautiful. That's a miraculous story.
It is.
In fact, that they reconciled.
It is.
It's just incredible. But Calissa, that couldn't have been easy for you. Living with your mom on your own, probably caregiving for her in ways emotionally. And as you said, that would prepare you for your calling today, as you're such a mental health advocate. You work in different fields with young. You and a very public voice in mental health and well-being. But, you know, once your family came back together as this unified family, which is incredible, you started to have more of an awakening spiritually, and Awana played a role in that. Talk to us about your journey becoming baptized and what happened there.
So with Awana, I had no idea what it was. People were talking about it, and essentially it's a youth group. It's a program that's open to everybody. You don't have to go to church to attend. But we were connected to a church in Brantford, and the first time I went, I just felt like I was at home. You know, the leaders were just so welcoming and loving, and you could feel God's spirit through them. And, you know, I would just participate in all these events, and as I got older, I could no longer be in Awana, so I transitioned to junior youth, and then I transitioned to senior youth. I ended up going to Jamaica on a missions trip, which was also incredible. Wow. And I can tell you, I felt God in those moments. And I knew that my calling was to work with people in some capacity. And that's what I've been doing.
Yeah, it's amazing. Wow. You know, eventually you did meet your birth mother.
I did.
And that experience was significantly challenging, but also it grew you in ways probably you didn't anticipate.
Yeah, you know, to be honest with you, I didn't know what to expect. Now, I knew that this woman suffered from severe mental health, so it's that juggling act of, do I have the right to blame her for giving me up, or do I accept forgiveness and understand that it wasn't her decision and that it was something that she struggled with? And I struggled. When I meet this woman, am I going to love her? Am I going to have resentment? I felt everything, every emotion that you can imagine. You know, when I first met her and I looked her in the eye, I saw myself. I saw, this is someone that actually looks like me. Because growing up, there wasn't a lot of Black people around. It was all white people. So, you know, being a member of the Black community was something that I wasn't accustomed to. So through her, I met aunts and uncles and cousins and siblings. So I have a beautiful woman of a sister. She is my best friend. Her name is Trissy. She was actually 14 years old when I was given up for adoption. So you can imagine the trauma that she went through. When we reunited, it was an incredible experience. Even to this day, we finish each other's sentences. We have the same thoughts. I look at her, she knows what I'm thinking, and vice versa. She is a beautiful woman of God who uplifts me. You know, if I need a shoulder to cry on, she's the one that I call.
Do you just marvel at the fact that God brought you both back together?
Absolutely. And the funny story with that is my adopted mother was the one that found her online. So she found her when I was 16 years old on a website called classmates.com. And she told me about it. And I said, no, this is, like, it's not that easy. That's not how this works. So I sat on it. And then a couple of years later, I ended up making an account. I told nobody. And I was very bold. I said, my birth name is such and such, and I think I'm your sister. I got a response 45 minutes later, and then the rest is history.
Calissa, this is an incredible story, and it's amazing to see how God wove things together in different ways. But there is still a lot of experience that you had with trauma, probably PTSD. One of the other challenges you experienced in your childhood was childhood sexual abuse. And you had to go forward to your adoptive mom and talk to her about this. Wow. I mean, what was that journey like?
That was a pinnacle moment in our relationship, and I was a young child. I was no more than 5 or 6 years old, and I still remember it. It was tough to go to her for the reasoning that it was 2 of her family members, you know, that were the ones that did that to me. And in my mind, even as a young little girl, I thought to myself, my mommy's not going to love me anymore because that's her family that did that to me. And nothing could be further from the truth. My mom started crying, and she started to try and take responsibility of, I'm so sorry, I didn't know, thank you for telling me. And then she took action. I was her little girl. I was hurting. I was going through something that no child should ever have to go to. And she protected me from then on.
Calissa, that's a beautiful outcome of a very painful experience and story. And it's not everybody's outcome. So.
No, it's not. And that's not lost on me. That's another tangible moment that God was alive. Yes. And he made sure that he had his hand on my shoulder and on my mom's, and just made that connection between us even stronger.
Calissa, you mentioned, growing up, there weren't a lot of people who looked like you because you were adopted into a white family. Plus, you were moving all over Canada and maybe not in communities where Black people were represented. As a leader now, a public speaker, a mental health advocate, someone teaching in universities, what does representation mean to you, and what does that look like for our viewer watching right now so that we all understand the importance of that?
Well, it's interesting because growing up in a white environment, my experience was quite different than those that grew up in any sort of BIPOC community. And right now what I'm feeling is there's such a struggle and a need for strong Black voices in our community across North America. So I've really been tailored with the job, and I've been blessed with the opportunities to be able to speak to that. We are still dealing with huge problems in communities. We're underrepresented in a lot of ways, politically, in education, academia, in society. So when someone like me is able to stand in front of a classroom as a professor, I will have Black students come up to me and say, Professor, I didn't think that I could ever do what you're doing, but seeing you at the front of the classroom gives me hope. The same thing when I'm on TV. This is something that I didn't think I could accomplish. I want to be the voice for the voiceless, and that mental health advocacy piece is a part of that.
Calissa, I can't help but ask this question. You are a mental health advocate, but you are facing the reality that you have a biological parent who struggled with significant mental health, and then your adoptive mom also did. Does it ever feel like, I'm thinking of a viewer watching right now who might be saying, well, that's my family experience. That's my nucleus. This is what I'm in. Did you ever feel like, well, will I be like that? Will I be struggling with my mental health? Or what was that journey like for you?
Until I was 30 years old, I was terrified. I really felt that I'm going to get schizophrenia. I'm going to have some form of mental health disorder because it does pass down through generations. So I've never prayed so hard in my entire existence of God, please, I cannot deal with another layer of trauma unless there's a reason for it, right? Because we don't know. We don't know what God has planned for us. We just need to step into that journey and accept it. But it was really scary. There's that whole concept of nature versus nurture as well. So now I'm thinking, well, my adopted mom is struggling. I'm seeing what she's going through. Am I going to start to pick up those characteristics as well? So, I'm blessed to say that I am neurospicy. I have ADHD, but that's as far as it goes. 1, 2, 3, squirrel. And I have one of my twins also has ADHD. So, I really feel like the background that I've grown up with has given me the tools and expertise to be able to face it.
Calissa, you mentioned your twins, and you did go through a season where you experienced the loss of a little one, in pregnancy, and then your twins, Noah and Koa. And that was a very dark season of sorrow for you. How did you get through that season and move forward?
I remember I delivered Koa first, and actually today is the anniversary, May 8th, when I delivered him and said goodbye. And 2 days ago, on May 6th, Noah was May 8th, and then Koa was May 6th. And I remember holding my babies and having to say goodbye. And that is a trauma and an experience that no mother should have to go through. Any parent shouldn't have to go through. When my husband and I went home, I know that we had this discussion of just grief, and it was overwhelming. And I remember being in his arms and bawling. I was crying, I was screaming, and I was looking up to the heavens, and I'm saying, God, why are you doing this to me? What did I do to deserve this? Have I not been through enough trauma? All I want is a biological connection, because I didn't get that growing up at all. Why can't I have a little one that looks like me? It is honestly the only time in my existence that I didn't want to live. I didn't want to go on. It was momentary. It was situational, but I really struggled with my faith in those moments of, what's the point? If I'm not meant to be a mother, if you're going to take these things away from me, why am I believing in you? Are you really there?
Calissa, what would you say to the woman watching right now who has experienced the loss of a child? God spoke to you clearly in that season. What's that message you would want to say to someone who's going through the same grief?
My messaging to my clients, to my students, to family members and friends is always the same. When it comes to grief and trauma, there is no expectation for you to get have to get over it. I want you to get through it, right? And how are you going to get through it? Now let's talk about tangible steps. And the first one is pray. Talk to God. Lay out your heart to him, and then he's going to answer.
Calissa, that's so good. Thank you so much for sharing your story, for the advocacy work you do. Thank you for being the bright light, the leader you are today. And I'm so grateful and excited to see what else you do for the communities around us and for Canada. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Friend, maybe today you saw yourself in Calissa's story. Maybe you've been through some things that made you question your worth, wonder if you belong, or wonder what the future holds. Well, Calissa is a story of redemption and God moving in ways we can't expect. And so remember that that can be your story too. Before the pain, the roles, the accomplishments, you are a child of God. Psalm 139 tells us that he knit us together in our mother's womb, that we are fearfully and wonderfully made. And that's who you are. That's who Calissa is. That's who I am. And there's nothing in you that God cannot redeem. If you need prayer, call our prayer partners, 1-866-273-4444.